Well, hey there. It's Katie. It is the top of the hour at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, and this Zoom meeting kicks off our. Oh, sorry about that. This kicks off our 16 weeks of the winter weight loss session. Again, if you can't join me live, no big deal. You can always submit questions to me ahead of time, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. If it's a private question and you don't want it like read out loud, or maybe it's just something you want to keep private, then that's fine too. You could just say, can you just answer this question to me privately? And I will. Okay. I want you to feel as supported as you possibly could in this whole thing. Okay. And because I do respect your time, I try to keep the Zoom meetings fast. I try to teach a lesson. And then if there are no questions, then I will just end the meeting. This is our very first meeting. So I checked my email quickly before I came on here, and I didn't get any questions ahead of time, which is understandable. We are a small, intimate group, and this is our first meeting. So I'm not surprised at all. But what I wanted to teach you about today was raising awareness. One of my goals is to have you start to pay attention as you go through your day. And the reason I want you to do this is because studies have shown that people who struggle with their weight tend to score low on emotional intelligence tests, which means you can be a total rock star in your work, in your relationships, in a lot of different areas. But for whatever reason, emotional intelligence has not been scored very high on. And it could just very well be like, I know as a mom, you don't tend to consider yourself or consider your emotions. They kind of tend to take a back burner to the rest of your life. And then what happens is, as you don't use that skill, you tend to lose it. So if you struggle with your weight and it seems elusive to you and you might not understand why, very good chance that it's in the realm of emotional intelligence. And so one of the tools I teach you, and try to do it straight out of the gate, is how to raise your emotional intelligence. Because once you do that, everything else kind of falls in place. So raising awareness, raising your emotional intelligence, paying attention in your day, all those things help build your self-esteem, which is a huge component of weight loss. And that's a whole pillar of itself. And further on down the line, I'm going to give you more tools for you to be able to use to help you raise your self-esteem. But for the purpose of our call right now, I just wanted to go over how to give you some tools for you to raise your emotional intelligence, raise the awareness that you're bringing to your day, go over what triggers are and what hunger cues are. I use them interchangeably, and in the past, that has been a bit confusing. So I want to clarify that, so that if you're a little bit like, well, wait, is this a cue or is this a trigger? I don't know. I don't understand. I will explain that. And then I do have a little bit of homework for you. It's not stressful, but as you go through your week, I want to challenge you to take what I'm going to teach you and apply it throughout the week, because I guarantee you will be stunned at what you discover about yourself. And discovering things about ourselves is actually strikes right at the core of weight loss. So, okay, so how do you raise your awareness? If you've watched the Start Here video, I go over three things that I want you to do for weight loss right away. The first one is, I want you to start planning your meals 24 hours ahead of time. And there's a bunch of reasons why I have you do that. And I go into a lot more detail within that class. So as you're working your way through the health and wellness blueprint, I kind of try to give you more context as to why I have you do things, so that it's not a burden to you, but it actually will help you make sense to you and be like, okay, I could do that because now I understand why she has me doing this. So when you write down your food ahead of time, what it does is it causes you to work in the prefrontal cortex of your brain. That prefrontal cortex is where, it's the region of your brain where the goals are. It's where long-term planning happens. It's where you're kind of like functioning as your best self. Okay. There is another part of your brain, which is called the limbic system, which is just a reactionary. It's kind of like the drunk uncle. I like to call him. Like, he's just, he's the party guy, he's the fun guy. And he's the one that's going to tell you, like, just eat it. It doesn't matter. This one bite won't hurt you. Live for now, like whatever. Right. So So you have these two vying parts of your brain. But the whole point of writing your food down 24 hours ahead of time is to train yourself to get used to kind of working from that prefrontal cortex region of your brain so that you kind of like what you work will grow stronger. And so my goal is to get you to um like get that muscle a little bit stronger, get you used to keeping your word to yourself, making long-term goals, making long-term plans, because then it becomes a habit, it becomes part of who you are, and it doesn't require then as much thought and as much like like it's not as much effort. So right now, especially as we kick this off, you're going to be feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to constantly think about this all the time. Like this isn't what I thought it was going to be. You might find yourself having to be conscious a lot more at the beginning because you're going to be training neural pathways, you're going to be shaping the way your brain works. But it's important to do that now because you need to be in control of your brain. For so long we have spent life on default or just like responding to our brain and assuming what our brain is telling us is true, where really our brain was designed to like put us on autopilot as much as possible because it uses a lot of calories, it burns a lot of energy, so it tries to be efficient, so it will automate as much as it possibly can in a good way. I mean, it's a wonderful thing the way it was designed, but when it comes to food being so abundant in our culture, our lives are not as busy and we're more sedentary. It's definitely not helpful if you're trying to lose weight, right? So we kind of have to work on our brain and like get it to do what we want it to do. So the way we do that is first write out your food 24 hours ahead of time. That's going to start working that prefrontal cortex. I call it a muscle. It's not a muscle. It's part of your brain, but it gets you in the habit of thinking long term from a different region of your brain than just the reactionary thing. Now, the second part of that is there's going to be times throughout the day where your brain is going to be like, look, you're hungry and you didn't write down that you wanted to eat this fistful of raisins. Like it could be healthy food, right? You didn't write down you wanted these raisins, but look, it's after lunch and you're in the mood for something sweet, and raisins are really good for you. You could totally have those raisins and not feel guilty at all. You should really eat those raisins, right? What I want you to do is recognize it, right? Bring awareness to it because your brain is going to get you to do whatever it wants you to do. And if you're not aware of it, you will constantly be like, why did I just eat that? What? You know, so bringing awareness to it will totally help with that. Okay. And so the second part is I want you to keep your word to yourself. Now, as a chronic yo-yo dieter, part of that feeling of like when the diet, like you go off the wagon or it just doesn't work out and you feel like, oh man, I failed again. That really compounds and hurts your self-esteem. It hurts your self-efficacy and it hurts your like integrity in a way. And so part of this first component is to kind of rebuild the confidence you have in yourself, rebuilding that self-efficacy, being able to say, you know what, I can keep my word to myself. I can go ahead and do this. Like it's possible. And all you have to do is just stay. And if this is hard for you, which it probably will be, especially the first couple weeks while you're getting used to it, your brain is going to tell you you're crazy, this is stupid. Remember, your brain just wants to keep you happy and safe. So if it feels like you're working harder than it really wants you to, it's going to come up with like, you really don't need to do this. This is just stupid. Just don't worry about this. You don't need to worry about this right now, right? So by writing your food down 24 hours ahead of time and then sticking with it, regardless of what your brain tells you, um, you are you're building that neural pathway of self-efficacy, of keeping your word to yourself. And it's so important to do that because you start to believe like, hey, if I could do this for 24 hours, like I can maybe do this tomorrow too. And another thing too is you're starting to build a relationship with your future self. And that is another whole core peer or pillar that we'll go over as well. But like keeping your word to your future self and having an actual relationship to the person you want to become. Studies have shown that your the way your brain thinks about yourself in the future is the same way it actually thinks of another human being. So your brain actually thinks of your future self, like who you want to become, what you want to look like, how you want to act, um, all those things. It considers it a totally separate entity than your current person. So you're actually building a relationship and considering um, another person in the future. And we start with just 24 hours. So when you're writing your 24 hours ahead of time, you need to consider like, what am I doing tomorrow? How hungry am I going to be? Will I be exercising? Will I be out all day? Am I going to be home all day? Is it cold out? I mean, that would affect what you want to eat. Like, so if it's a really cold day, maybe you don't want a salad. Maybe you would feel more satisfied with soup or, whatever. It's up to you for your food plan. But the whole point is to start to develop a relationship with your future self, because the more you get to know that future version of you, that future self, the stronger you're going to advocate for that person. You almost want to fall in love with them, which really sounds self-centered and self-absorbed and like self-consuming, which is not the goal. The goal is to kind of have your own back and start actually considering the future version of you and who you want to become, rather than staying in that limbic system of your brain of just reacting to the here and now. You really want to build that relationship, which is a whole nother pillar, which we'll go over. But so raising awareness. Now, the last part of this is you write your food 24 hours ahead of time, and then you keep your word to yourself. The reason why I do that is to help build your self esteem, build your self confidence, build that awareness for yourself. Now, what I want you to do now is start paying attention to sudden feelings of hunger, something you never expected to suddenly feel hungry. And you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's been less than 3 hours. Um, through the whole course of the week, I want you to notice if there are particular times or situations or events that happen that trigger or cue your brain to start telling you, okay, now it's time to eat. I'll give you an example, and it's totally silly because, like, now looking back, I'm like, wow, this is totally, my brain is totally ridiculous. But every time I would pull up my driveway, I thought it was time to eat. Like, my brain would signal, okay, let's go eat. We're home now. And it didn't matter what time of day it was. And I always just believed my brain. I always just thought, okay, I was hungry because I felt hunger. But remember, there's those two stomachs. There's the physical, biological hunger, and then there's the phantom hunger that your brain will conjure up to keep you happy, keep you safe, or it just will do it as a response to whatever cue or trigger that was going on in the situation. So if you're like around an unpleasant situation or an unpleasant person, and all of a sudden you feel suddenly hungry, that would be one thing I want you to pay attention to. So maybe it's coming home from work every day. You might pass a coffee shop and you suddenly feel hungry. I want you to take note of it. I don't want you to answer the hunger unless you're actually genuinely hungry, biologically. But if it's just habit hunger, I want you to start to notice it. Don't answer it, just notice it. So for me, noticing when I pulled up the driveway, I could have eaten breakfast and then run to the post office, and it would be maybe 8 or 9 in the morning, and when I came back home, I was like, "Okay, it's time to eat." And I'm like, what? It's not time to eat. This is silly. I'm not hungry right now. Like, what? Why did my brain tell me I was hungry? So I wouldn't answer it. And every time I didn't answer it, those are calories I wasn't eating, which is so fascinating to me. Right. And then, you do that over the course of a week. And it's like, wait a second, I didn't feel deprived. And I just stepped on the scale. And truly, I was 8 pounds lighter. And that had never happened before. I used to have to work so hard to lose any amount of weight, and then just paying attention to my real hunger versus when my brain told me I was hungry and I actually wasn't. Now, I'm not talking about true hunger. I'm really just talking about sudden hunger, and we go on this in depth in the health and wellness blueprint, which you'll get to if you've just started. But sudden hunger, with so it's not actual biological hunger, but it's probably emotional hunger. It comes on quick. It's usually for something specific. So if you say, okay, well, if I'm feeling hungry, I'll go have some carrots. your brain's like, oh no, we're not having carrots. We're going to go have some cookies. Cookies is what we're hungry for, right? It's usually something very, um, very savory or very satisfying or very sweet that you really want to answer to. Okay. So it's not like I'm hungry for carrots. That's like that's not happening, right? Not with sudden hunger anyhow. So, phantom hunger. So, what I want you to do this week for your homework is I want you to notice and isolate those sudden times of day. So it could either be a cue or it could be a trigger, however you want to call it. But I have said I've used them interchangeably. And I want you to start to bring awareness to what is going on um, in a holistic sense at that moment in time for you. So, for me, at 4 o'clock every afternoon, I was like starving. And I kind of was like, well, I had lunch earlier. It's not quite dinner. Maybe that's why I'm hungry. And really, I was overwhelmed. And my husband works in New York City. We live in Pennsylvania. So he was gone already a good 12, 13 hours from that point. I was, we have 8 children. I homeschool. They're home with me all day. I was feeling overwhelmed, but my brain like didn't read it as overwhelmed. It just knew like if I ate something, I would be distracted. And that hit of dopamine from whatever it was that I was going to eat would help me feel better. And I didn't question it. I didn't know, I didn't have these tools available to me to know to question. I just assumed I was hungry, or I just assumed I have a chocolate craving. So every day at 4 o'clock, I'd grab handfuls of chocolate chips right out of the Toll House bag, right? And just have them. So once I was aware of this behavior, then I was able to develop strategies that would help me actually get to the need of what I was feeling and respond and answer the need. Which for me was being overwhelmed. Okay. And then answer that and take care of me there, as opposed to just putting a band-aid on it and eating the chocolate chips and really feeling worse after and feeling like a failure. Like, oh man, why couldn't I stay away from the chocolate chips today? I told myself I would. But your brain is always going to override you, because it really wants to keep you healthy. It really wants to keep you safe, and it really wants to keep you satisfied and happy, safe, and so it will do whatever it takes to convince you to do what it says. So without these tools, you'll always kind of, almost spin in circles. So your homework is I want you to notice the thought that comes with that sudden urge to eat. So it could be when you're sitting down on the couch at the end of a day and you have a sudden urge to eat, like, oh, I should have chips right now, or what can I have? I want you to start to notice those thoughts. And then what we're going to do next week is we're going to isolate the thoughts, so you can even start writing them down, even if you want to write them down in your food journal, like, you know 4 o'clock, wanted chocolate chips. Yeah, let's see, pulled up the driveway, was suddenly hungry for food, but I had just eaten. Like, those would be mine, right? So I want you to just start noting in your food journal, just at certain times, because what you will notice is certain patterns will start to emerge. They'll be, like you'll notice, like, hey, whenever I am, driving home from work on a Thursday, which is when we have these meetings and I'm feeling stressed about them, I'm extra hungry and I always stop at the drive-through. I never noticed that before. I just always thought I was hungry on Thursdays for whatever reason, or it was just, we're kicking off the weekend early or whatever. This will help bring awareness to your behaviors, because you can't change what you don't notice. So this will definitely help you become aware of the areas where your brain is telling you you're hungry or you need to eat, when in fact that's not true. It's trying to help you out, because there's other needs that need to be met and dealt with that maybe you're not even aware of yet. And that I will teach you how to do. But first, we have to do this groundwork. And so the groundwork is writing your food out 24 hours ahead of time, paying attention to those hunger cues that you have, or those triggers that you have, and then writing that down. And then, what I tell you to get in the in the class is a jar for your splashes of joy. Now, your splashes of joy are they're like little glass pieces, and every time you like really, really want to eat something that you did not plan for yourself 24 hours ahead of time, I want you to get, for every like 10 minutes that you can get through with not answering that craving or that desire to eat, I want you to give yourself a splash of joy. And what they found was like after 100 splashes of joy, or after 100 little times that you can do that, you're actually it's a tool for you to use to that will build that neural pathway in your brain of reinforcing that you keep your word to yourself. Okay. And then also that jar represents food that you did not eat. Okay. So it's just a tool, it's a visual aid. I highly recommend you get it and then use it. And, you can have that feeling of pride, like, look at all the times, like, especially when you might feel like, oh, this isn't working, or I have no willpower, because maybe you do wind up giving in and eating something that wasn't on your plan. You can always look at your joy jar and say, you know what, I do have the ability to keep my word to myself. Look at all those times I did. Right. And by the time you hit that 100th splash of joy, being able to say, you know what, I didn't write that down, but maybe I'll plan, I didn't write that cookie down today and it looks really good. I'm going to put it in a baggie. And when I write out my food plan, I'm going to plan for it tomorrow. And then when I do have it, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to maybe make a cup of tea or have a cup of milk with it. And I'm going to savor every bite and make sure it's delicious and make sure I really enjoy it, and give your brain that satisfaction of being able to eat it, but you're eating it on your terms, not just reacting. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps you get the ball rolling here. Again, your homework is I want you to just start noticing when sudden hunger comes on. And in my ebook, we go over it. And I believe in your user's manual, there is a worksheet called HALT. And that's when I want you to ask yourself, like, are you genuinely hungry? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling lonely? Are you feeling tired? So it helps bring awareness to your daily activities, and you can even journal in there, or even just in your food journal you can write down, like, 4 o'clock, wanted chocolate chips so bad. you know so just start paying attention to it, and then next week I am going to teach you how to plug those thoughts into what I call the model, and we'll be able to dissect it even more and find out what we can do instead. All right. So I know there was no questions ahead of time. If you have questions, you feel free to put them in the chat. You're more than welcome to do that. I always like to stay on until all the questions are answered, but I don't believe there are any questions happening. Yeah, I don't see any, so I don't want to just be on here for the sake of being on here. I want you to use your time as you would like to. And I don't want to take up too much of your own time. I appreciate you being here with me and taking the time to go through this program. I hope it's a blessing to you. So having said that, I don't see questions popping up. So I will end this meeting. If you have questions based on this or anything else, you can always just hit reply to any email I send you. I will see it in my inbox and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have that come up. Okay. But in the meantime, have a great week. Don't forget to do your homework, start paying attention, start writing things down, and get cracking. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.